Hello again, guys. I'm Bobby with Madness Labs, and Emily is sitting right beside me. She is the co-founder of Madness Labs, my wonderful wife, and she's going to be kind of co-piloting in the background, making sure that I don't sound stupid. Possible. Okay, so this video we're going to start getting into CSS, and CSS is the actual styling for our web pages. So it's actually going to help pretty things up and make it look appealing. So they're very simple to write, and I guess as with every tutorial video, we need to tell you what CSS stands for. It stands for Cascading Style Sheets, which just basically means that these rules can override each other. So as I kind of touched on in the last video, styles are applied by the browser. They're default styles that kind of pretty it up and make it look like it should. Add in all those little font stylings and different things like that. And then we're actually going to be able to overwrite them with our own rules. So every CSS declaration always has two parts to it. So you have a selector that we see right here that I'll highlight in blue. So in this case, this is selecting the body tag. And we have the actual rules. So background color is light blue. So in this case, this would turn the entire page light blue. And as you see, every rule is separated with a colon between the actual name of the name of the property and the actual value. And then every property value ends with a semicolon to let it know that this is the end of that value. So let's go ahead and jump right in and write a couple of these. So here's the page we are working on in the last video. So we had some basic HTML elements laid out. Now we want to target these elements and start to style them. So first off, let's start with something very similar to what they had. And at this point, there's three different ways we can actually write CSS styles. So there are inline styles, which are actually written directly on the HTML elements. There are internal styles, which are actually put inside of the head of a document. And then there are external styles. And these are things that are stored inside of a CSS file and actually linked into the document inside of the head. Now, external styles are the de facto standard for actually using your styles, or for actually programming your styles. Putting them inside of the head of the document is very inefficient, and it can be a little bit of a nightmare to manage as well as read over. So we're going to show you how to do internal styles first, and then we're going to show you how to migrate those into an external style sheet, as that, again, is the preferred method. So to add some styles, all we need to do is go inside the head of our document, and then we're going to actually add a new tag called style. And again, I'm going to use the autocomplete from VS Code to save myself a lot of headache. So I'm going to enter down, and again, I'm going to tab in so that I can maintain my sanity. So now I'm going to write a body style. And so again, the selector is just selecting different elements inside of our page so that it can apply the styles. So in this case, I'm targeting the body, and as you can see when I highlight there, that's going to highlight the body tag. So that's what I'm targeting with this style. So now if I say something like background, so something cool to note, this is something that VS Code does for us. It's going to automatically give us an autocomplete list of all the different options as we start typing, even if I type it wrong like I just did. So we can actually say, okay, I want background color. And I can actually page down through this list, and then it gives us a nice little handy tip that tells us what this rule does. So background color sets the background color of an element. That's what we want. So now I'm actually going to type some kind of color. And this color can be one of many different options. I can use hexadecimal, which is like a 3 to 6 digit number A through H combination. And this will actually allow us to like set really, really specific colors. I could use RGBA value. And if anyone's done digital design or anything like that, this is probably all very, very familiar to you. And if not, probably not so much, but it's okay. Google up color picker, and you'll find that Google has one built in that you can pick a color, and it'll tell you the different values that you can just copy and paste in. Or you can just use some like regular color names. So maybe I want a light blue, or a light coral, or light cyan, or maybe I just want something simple like blue. And again, there's the tooltip telling you what the actual hexadecimal representation of that color is. VS Code is awesome. Thank you guys for all your hard work. So I'm just going to use something like light blue, and then I'm going to save. And now I can go back over to the browser and refresh, and you can see now my page is light blue. And if we want to inspect this, we can click on the body tag, and we can see that this index.html on line 9 has this style applied. So I can actually see where the style is applied, and actually, I could actually change things inside of here as well. So I could actually change this to, okay, I can change this to green if I wanted to. And so this is where DevTools comes in handy, because again, with the document object model being rendered inside of the actual browser, most browsers have these DevTools that let you live play around with these things. So you can kind of experiment and play around and then change your code accordingly whenever you find that this is what you want it to look like. So I'm going to refresh again, and you'll notice these changes go away because they're not permanent. They're only done on our machine. So now I'm going to jump back over here, and let's style some of these other elements on the page. So let's write maybe an H1 style, and I want this to be centered on the page, and maybe I want it to be white, the color of the text to be white. So I'm going to say text align and then center. And again, notice the auto-completing. It's incredibly powerful, and it saves us from having to remember everything, because here's the truth about web development. You don't have to have a memory to be a developer. Your biggest resource as a developer is knowing how to research and find answers, use autocomplete, use tools that help you get the stuff done. Not knowing everything. That's kind of a big myth in this field, that you have to be some wizard and you have to know all this stuff. When honestly, if Google went down tomorrow, most developers on the face of the planet probably wouldn't have a job. So now we've got a text align center. Let's also add a font color, or sorry, it's not font color, it's just color. That throws me off. You guys should fix that, W3, just saying. So we can do color, and I'm gonna use the hex value because I'm awesome. So FFF is white and 000 is black, just for reference. And that's shorthand. We could also do FFF, FFF, 6 Fs. Either one's valid, just use your preference. I prefer shorthand when I can use it, but to each their own. So I'm going to jump back over here and refresh, and now we'll notice that my H1's font is centered and it's white. And again, if I inspect it with Chrome, I can see those styles have applied. And what you'll notice here is that we can actually write styles. So for instance, maybe we want to change the font weight to normal. And what you'll notice is this will no longer be bolded. So this is where the cascading part of CSS comes into play. So the style that was applied by the browser is being overridden by the actual style that we wrote inside of our HTML document. So this is the way that CSS works. More specific rules, or rules that are written further down in the page, are going to overwrite rules that are further up on the page or less specific. So this is the beauty of CSS. We can apply very general styles, and then we can apply more specific styles as things go on. It also can get very confusing because styles can be applied like this, and so you might have styles that are applied by the browser, or applied by this, or applied by that. And so using these dev tools to pick apart what is being applied and what's overriding what is going to be essential for this process. So we can do other things in here as well. Like for instance, on this H1, you might notice this orange block when you highlight over this element. And if we look into the dev inspect element tools, we can actually see that it's got this thing called margin, and that's what this orange area is. Something can also have a border, it can also have some padding, and then it actually has the actual element size itself. This gives us a really cool visual representation of this box model, as they call it. So what this is again, the browser is giving it some default styles. As you can see here, we have some margin before, margin after, margin end, start end, all that kind of jazz. So we can actually overwrite these with our styles. So we can say maybe we don't want margin. And again, as you can see from this visual representation, margin is kind of the area outside of an element, the area outside of the box of the element. border is around the edges of the element, padding is on the inside of the element, and then you have the actual element itself, its actual size. So let's go ahead and edit the margin. I want this to bump right up to the top. So I'm going to just say margin 0. And what that's going to do is just remove the margins altogether. And now you can see that you can see that when I hover over this, it has 0 margin now. There is no margin on this element anymore. And the way that margin and a lot of these CSS rules work is in a clockwise fashion. So you can think of each element, again, as a box. So each one is just a box. And so if I wanted to set more specific styles, like say, in this case, I don't want margin on the top and the bottom, but I would like some margin on the left and the right. So I could set something like 0, 15 pixels, 0, 15 pixels. And now you can see when I hover over this element that I have the orange boxes on the left and the right. So you start at the top of your box and you work your way clockwise around to set the different values. You'll also notice that I'm using pixels. So if you don't know what pixels are, it's definitely worth a Google. But there's different units of measure that you can set different things with. So in this case, we're using pixels. They're very, very set. They're determined values. So if you've ever heard of HD or 720p or 1080p, what that means is 1080 pixels. And that's from top to bottom. How many pixels are on that display? Or if you've heard a resolution like 1920 by 1080, well, that resolution is just a pixel value. So in this case, 1920 by 1080 means 1920 pixels across and 1080 pixels up and down. So this is where this unit of measure is coming in. I'm telling it to use a firm 15 pixels on both sides, no matter what. So this is not very friendly for all screen sizes. So you might want to use a more fluid measure. So we can maybe use, instead, maybe use 20%, 20%. So now this is going to take 20% of the screen space and put it on each side. So now when we hover over this element, you can see a much larger area of orange. And as I shrink and grow the browser, you can see that that grows to 20% of the screen. So that's a general gist of the margins and the units of measure. Again, you also have paddings, you have things like that. Again, use the CSS resource on W3 Schools. They have a brilliant reference of what all the different rules are, how to set all these different things. There's a bunch of them. And we'll get more in depth into these things as we go further on. But it's just important to understand the general concept of targeting the elements, applying these different styles, and playing around with them and saving them, and then trying them out in the browser until you get comfortable with this. So there's the general intro to CSS. We'll get into classes and different things like that to target things more specifically in future videos, but I think that gives you the general concept and enough to play around. So as always, at the end of the videos, I'm going to be happy with my changes. Oh, actually, no, sorry. We have one more thing we need to do, as Emily just reminded me. We have one more thing we need to do. We need to take these styles and we need to put them in an external style sheet so that we can apply these to multiple pages throughout our project. So to do that and get our external styles rather than internal styles, we need to create a new file called style or whatever we want .css. And this is a CSS file. So this is basically just a cascading style sheet. So we're going to then take the styles from the head of our document and we're going to cut them out, and then we're going to paste them inside of this document. Like so, and then save. And then now we're going to take this style tag out. Now we'll save and go back to the browser, and we'll notice all of our styles are gone. Wah, wah. So to fix that, what we need to do is we need a link to that style sheet. So we won't get too much into linking and stuff like that, but all links generally inside of a document, whether it be an A tag or an image, or in this case, a link tag in the head, they're all relative to the current document that you're in. So in this case, index and style are in the same directory. So the relative path to that file is just style.css. And we'll touch on this in a future video where we get into including images and things like that with our HTML. But for right now, we're just going to make a link tag by typing in link and tabbing, and it's going to automatically put that awesome rel tag for style sheet and get us ready to type in the link to this file. And now we're just going to, again, relatively link to this file, so style.css, and save. And now we'll notice that our styles are rendering again. So now instead of having this hard-coded into this one page, we now have it in its own separate file. So now we can include this in multiple pages throughout our project, and it's going to make our lives much, much easier, especially seeming that if this is a style sheet, most of the stuff that we're styling is going to be mostly universal. So we want to write these in external style sheets and then apply them to the actual head like we've done here. So now, as I do at the end of every video, we're going to commit these changes. We're happy with this, and we can say add basic styles. And I can commit that, sync it off to GitHub. Okay, so now it's synced up to GitHub. So let's check it out, make sure that it's synced correctly. And now we can see there's our style sheet. It's synced up. We can see our newest commit. And if we wanted to, we can even click in and see it's there. So that's a general intro to CSS. Hopefully that gets you enough to at least dig in. And again, use the references on W3, Google it up yourself, and continue your learning, friends. All right, thanks guys. See you next video.